For today's tutorial, you will need the Addy 46 pin knitting machine, 5 skeins of Huger fur yarn, number 4 worsted yarn, waste yarn, yarn needle, crochet hook 6.5 millimeters, scissors, stitch markers, and measuring tape. Start by making 7 tubes that are 8 rows of waste yarn, 100 rows of fur yarn, change to 8 rows of waste yarn, and then cast off. You will also need 2 tubes that are 8 rows waste yarn, 70 rows fur yarn, and then 8 rows of waste yarn, and then cast off. Okay, so first, I'm going to cast on my waste yarn. And you do that just by going back and forth or front and back of each pin. Okay, so I'm finishing off tube number 7. I'm just going to do 8 rows of waste yarn. When they come off the machine, you see they're very short. Most people, they turn them inside out because the inside is usually more fluffy than the outside. But for this particular yarn, I'm not going to flip it inside out, even though this side is fluffier. I won't do that because, I don't know if you can tell, but it's much easier to see the thread that the fur is attached to. So it's much easier to see the stitches. So when it's time to mattress stitch, you can see there, it's much easier to see them, and it makes it a lot easier, a lot quicker to sew your pieces together. So when it comes off the machine, you're going to stretch it, and you'll see it gets longer, but it gets thin. You can see the difference between the two. Now, of course, tension plays a big role whenever you are working on your knitting machine. Tension is really important. If it's too tight, it's going to be shorter. If it's loose, if your tension is loose, it's going to be longer. So just try and be mindful of that when you're making all of your tubes. Make sure that your tension is the same so that each one can come out the same length. You can see that. So everything is the same. Now I took my measuring tape and I measured each tube of 100 rows is about 21. It's about 21, almost 22 inches. So When you're measuring for yourself, if you need it bigger or smaller, just kind of be mindful of the tube length. So mine's 100 rows and it's about 22 inches. I did a little measurement of about 10 stitches, about 10 rows. 10 rows measures about 2 inches. It's about 2 to 2.5 inches. So if you need to make it longer, just be mindful that roughly about every 10 stitches that you add is going to add about 2 inches to your piece. Okay, so before you sew off all of your 100 pieces, I forgot to mention, take one of them and put it on your arm just to kind of see how long your arms need to be. The arm piece is just one tube and your arm's going to go through the middle. The arm piece is not going to have waist yarn, but just use it as a gauge. If this 100 piece is too short, let's say it stops about here, then you know you need to add more rows. Remember, every 10 rows is approximately 2 inches added on to the length. So if 100 rows is too short on your arms, or if it's too long, for me, the arms are going to be 90 rows of the fur yarn and then 5 rows of the acrylic yarn for the cuff. So make sure you save one before you sew it off to get the length of your arm piece. Okay, so the way in which we close the tubes off, I'm going to use my crochet hook. Always make sure that your yarn tail is on the opposite end from where you start. And so you can see here, I'm going to be picking up these stitches here. So I'm going to do one of the tubes on camera. So you're just picking them up, one on each side, and bringing it through. You're just going side to side and picking up a stitch. Oop, didn't bring that one all the way through. And you're going to continue doing this all the way down, all the way across. Make sure that you don't miss any of the stitches. You want to make sure that you pick up each one. You'll notice when you get down to the other end, it gets a little bit more difficult to see the stitches. So just take your time when you get down to the end. Kind of have to search in there for them just to make sure you don't miss any. Okay, I think I got one more here. Okay, when you get to the last one, you're going to take your yarn tail that's on this side and pull it through and then pull it tight. And then you're going to remove the waste yarn. I realized that when I was closing my tubes off, the crochet hook that I was using was too small. It recommends that you use a 6.5 millimeter. So I went and I got a bigger crochet hook. So make sure that you're using the right size crochet hook. It definitely makes a difference when you're working. I have my pieces. The only pieces that we haven't made so far are the arms. I'm going to show you how to make those on the machine. So these are our two 70 row pieces, and then the 7 100 row pieces. Take 2 of your 100 row pieces, and we're going to sew across the top here. So this is just a basic stitch, just taking my needle back and forth. And try to stay as close to the top as possible. Okay. Now you're going to flip it over. And you can see this line here. You're just going to pull it and fluff it out so that this line is not so visible. Okay. Now we're going to make a second one. So this is a shoulder. This is the front panel, and this is one of the back panels. Okay, so take 2 more of the 100 row tubes, and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, now we're going to flip it over. And fluff it out. You can see the difference. Okay. The next step is connecting the sides. Take one of the 70 row pieces and connect the front to the back. Let me set that aside. So open up the piece, and you're going to take your 70 row piece and put it at one end. I use a stitch marker to hold it in place. Now we're going to mattress stitch the 2 tubes together. Make sure you have a long piece of yarn when you're mattress stitching. Okay, so you see here, these are the stitches. And you're just going to line them up as best you can. And this is just normal mattress stitching. So I'm going to go in at the very top and find a bar. So I'm going to do 2 bars at a time. Once you find your bars, it is easier for you to continue to mattress stitch once you know what row you're going to be in. You're just going to put your needle where you see the yarn, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to go on this side and pick up 2 bars. It's kind of hard to see, but I have 2 bars on my needle. So this is just normal mattress stitching. If I can zoom in a little bit. And just make sure that you stay in the same line. So you see here, this is where my yarn went in over here. So I'm just going to go back in there and pick up the next 2 bars. So I'm just going to continue mattress stitching until I reach here, until I've reached both panels, sewn both panels together. And then once I get down there, I will be back. When you're mattress stitching, if your yarn begins to get short, all you have to do is just pull your yarn tail. And you're just going to close off the seam. And there you go. Okay, so I have a few more to do here. Okay. Keep all of your yarn tails. I know there's going to be a lot of them, but we will tie them off at the end. Okay, so when I sew this next side, I'm going to use this lime green yarn just so that it will help show what I'm doing when I'm mattress stitching. Okay, so now we're going to fold this down so that now we can sew our side piece to the front panel. I'm going to use my stitch marker just to hold them together. Okay, again, find your stitches. So I'm going to be going into this row here and into this row here. I got my 2 bars in between my stitches. Let me find my 2 bars over here. So if it's ever hard to see, just take your needle back into where this piece of yarn is here. So I'm just going to put my needle in there. And that way I can find my next 2 bars. And so you can see now when I pull my yarn tail, and there you go. That's what mattress stitching does. You have an invisible seam there. Okay, so I am going to change out this yarn back to this and mattress stitch this, and then I will be back. I have my side piece connected, and you can see the opening here. This is where the arm will be sewn. And there's our side piece, and this is where our arm's gonna go. Okay, so we're just gonna do the same thing on this side. Remember to open it up. You're going to mattress stitch here, fold it down, and then mattress stitch here. Okay, so we have both sides made. Now we're going to take another 100 row piece and we're going to connect the two sides together. Mattress stitch along here and mattress stitch along here to connect both sides together. Okay, so now we have our two sides connected. So the next step is making the arms.